In 2025, researchers dropped a dead cow 1,629 meters into the South China Sea and pointed a camera at what came next. What they expected was ordinary: crabs, amphipods, small scavengers picking at the edge of something dead. What arrived instead glided out of total darkness, slow, massive, and completely wrong for these waters. 8 Pacific sleeper sharks, a species that had no business existing anywhere near these waters. And what they did once they arrived stunned the scientists watching the footage. Welcome back to the Abyss Report. This is the real story of the deep-sea experiment that went somewhere nobody planned for. The study was led by researchers from Sun Yat-sen University and the Southern Marine Sciences and Engineering Guangdong Laboratory in China. Their goal was to simulate what scientists call a whale fall, the moment a large carcass sinks and creates a sudden burst of food on the deep sea floor. Whale falls are one of the most important events in deep-sea ecology, feeding entire scavenger communities for years, sometimes decades. But whale falls are rare and unpredictable, so researchers can't just wait around for one to happen. Instead, they lowered a cow carcass to the continental slope southeast of Hainan Island at a depth of 1,629 meters. A camera and recording equipment were positioned nearby to document exactly what happened. The team expected to observe typical deep-sea scavengers: crabs, amphipods, smaller fish. What they got instead was something nobody had planned for. Within a relatively short window, something much larger arrived. 8 individual sharks, moving with slow, deliberate precision through total darkness. The research team had inadvertently created a real-time, recorded whale fall simulation, and it was about to reveal an animal that had no business being there at all. The sharks that arrived were Pacific sleeper sharks, Somnosius pacificus. This is a large, slow-moving, deep-sea predator, typically found in the cold waters of the North Pacific, places like the Bering Sea, the Gulf of Alaska, and as far south as Baja California. They are built for cold water, sluggish metabolism, and life in permanent darkness. They had never, not once, been confirmed on camera in the South China Sea. This sighting marks the southernmost confirmed location for this species in the entire Pacific Basin. For researchers, this wasn't a minor detail. It meant a cold-water, deep-sea predator was living in tropical waters nobody expected it to tolerate. Some of the sharks that appeared were over 2.7 meters long, nearly 9 feet, and these larger individuals were noticeably more aggressive toward the carcass. Smaller sharks stayed back, circling cautiously instead of feeding directly. Researchers still aren't sure how long this population has been living this far south, undetected, which raises an uncomfortable question. What else is living down there that we simply haven't found yet? What happened next surprised even the scientists reviewing the footage. Instead of a chaotic feeding frenzy, the sharks took turns. Individuals feeding at the front of the carcass would eventually give way to sharks approaching from behind. It functioned almost like an orderly line, one shark yielding its position so another could feed. Lead researcher Han Tian described this as a genuine survival strategy, not a coincidence. Feeding priority appeared to be determined by each shark's individual competitive drive, even in the crushing dark of the deep sea. This kind of structured, sequential feeding had been seen before, but only in sharks scavenging whale carcasses floating near the surface. Seeing the same social behavior repeat itself over 1,000 meters down suggested something important. These rules of behavior aren't just a surface-level habit. They persist even in the aphotic zone, where total darkness makes coordination far harder to explain. In an environment defined by scarcity, these sharks were still, in their own way, taking turns. It's one of the clearest examples of structured social behavior ever documented in a deep-sea shark. There was one more detail buried in the footage that stood out. Pacific sleeper sharks lack a nictitating membrane, the transparent protective eyelid many other shark species have. Without that built-in shield, their eyes are left exposed and vulnerable during a feeding attack. So instead, researchers observed something else entirely. The sharks appeared to retract their eyes slightly as they tore into the carcass. It's a protective adaptation, likely evolved specifically to guard their eyes from damage during aggressive feeding. This kind of behavior is exactly the sort of detail that's almost impossible to observe without exactly this kind of deep-sea camera footage. A predator engineered by evolution to protect the one part of its body it can't afford to risk. Multiple female sharks of different sizes were also documented in the footage, suggesting a pattern of segregation by size and sex that's been seen in other large sharks but rarely recorded this deep. Every new detail from this footage added another layer to a story nobody expected to be telling.
So, why does any of this actually matter? Because Pacific sleeper sharks are not supposed to tolerate warm tropical water like this. Their entire biology is built around cold, slow-moving conditions. Finding them healthy, active, and feeding competitively in the South China Sea suggests our understanding of the species' actual range has been wrong for a long time. Researcher Han Tian put it directly. Their frequent presence in this region means our understanding of this population remains significantly limited. He also noted something more unsettling. The sheer aggression these sharks showed toward the carcass suggests this region still holds substantial food sources in the deep sea that scientists haven't identified yet. In other words, something down there is feeding a population of large predators well enough to sustain them, undetected, for who knows how long. That's not a small footnote in a study. That's an entire ecosystem operating in the dark, completely unmonitored, until one experimental cow carcass happened to reveal it. And it happened purely by accident. Nobody set out to discover this. It found them instead. Here's a detail that makes this discovery even stranger. Pacific sleeper sharks belong to the same genus as one of the most famous deep-sea animals in the world, the Greenland shark. The Greenland shark is the longest living vertebrate on the entire planet. Scientists estimate some individuals are over 400 years old, meaning some alive today were already swimming before the 1700s began. Both species are slow-moving, cold water specialists built for extreme longevity over speed or aggression. If Pacific sleeper sharks share even some of that same extended lifespan, then the sharks filmed feeding on this carcass could already be decades or even centuries old. Slow-growing, long-lived, deep-water predators like this are exactly the kind of animal that could persist undetected in a region for generations, quietly surviving in total darkness, completely unnoticed until a single experiment happened to shine a light in the right place at the right time. That's not just a curious biological detail, it's a reminder that entire lineages of ancient, long-lived predators can exist alongside us without ever being recorded, not because they're hiding, because nobody has been looking in the right place at the right depth for long enough. Scientists estimate that roughly 95% of the ocean floor remains completely unexplored in any real detail. This single cow carcass experiment, conducted in one relatively small patch of seafloor, rewrote the known range of an entire species in a single afternoon of footage. Imagine what else is sitting just outside the reach of the cameras we currently have in the water. Every one of these discoveries starts the same way, not with a grand expedition, but with someone simply choosing to look somewhere nobody had looked before. The deep sea isn't empty, it's patient. Whatever's down there has been waiting far longer than we've been looking. This particular experiment set out to study decomposition. It ended up rewriting what we thought we knew about an entire species instead. That's the deep ocean in a single sentence. You go looking for one answer and come back with a completely different question. 8 sharks. Thousands of kilometers from where they were supposed to be. A feeding queue nobody expected. An eye adaptation caught on camera for the first time. And a quiet reminder that the ocean is still full of things we haven't found yet. If you found this as unsettling as we did, you're not alone. Subscribe to the Abyss Report. We go back down next week. See you in the deep.